So it doesn't need me to stand here and talk to you all about why maternity workers matter. We know that there are lots of staff who are currently impacted by a range of mental health conditions like burnout, compassion fatigue and trauma, and that's certainly a lot of what we're seeing across the workforce. Although the pandemic has massively had an impact on that, we know that a lot of these issues were there before the pandemic started, and that it impacts both maternity workers and from newly qualified right through to those who are more experienced. So there are people within maternity workforce who are more widely affected. For example, those who are newly qualified midwives or trainees. So 2 out of 3 trainee obstetricians and gynecologists have shared how they're impacted by work-related trauma. But we also know from the 2019 report around a third of midwives experience burnout, anxiety and depression. And we know that those rates are higher in newly qualified midwives, student midwives, and also those who self-identify with having a disability. I mean, we could go on with the stats and how people are impacted. For me, and certainly within the work that we do, one thing is clear is that we need to do more to support maternity workers. That they feel valued, that they feel seen, but also that there are things that can be put in place to prevent the progression of mental health conditioning, beginning and also progressing. So some of the possible solutions that there are. What I've done is I've divided them up into an organizational level, a team level, and an individual level, because certainly what staff share with us is that whenever they share that they have a workload that is unmanageable or they're really struggling, they are told to go to a yoga session, sent to some resilience training. And while the motive behind that is probably really helpful, actually, I think the message that comes for those individual workers is the problem lies with you. And so certainly in the work that we do, it's very much looking at a top-down approach, but also a bottom-up approach, and that there is somewhere that people meet one another in the middle. So in that organizational level, what we think is will be massively helpful is to change the resilience narrative. Maternity workers are massively resilient. I mean, I've been working in this for over 15 years, and do they give all that they have? Absolutely. Do they give more than they have? Totally, which is why so many of them are burnt out and impacted. So I think there's something about changing the resilience narrative, also changing the culture of one where maternity workers and midwives and obstetricians are nurtured and cared for. Yes, for sure that they can provide the type of care that they want to do for those women at birth and people and families, but first and foremost because they're human beings. Also, one thing that I'm really passionate about is preparing student midwives. I don't think we do enough to prepare student midwives to enter into the workforce, in the sense of, you know, as a student, you're able to give the care that you want to give. You know, you're able to go and spend all that time that you need to with family, which is amazing. However, that then changes whenever you're qualified. And I think often that's certainly in those newly qualified midwives who certainly we've supported, where they want to leave a large part of that is there's a mismatch between what they thought the job was going to be and then what it actually is when they are qualified. And I think then it's supporting them and preparing them. Working in maternity is really challenging, both mentally and physically and emotionally. And it's how do we equip those students to prepare to enter that kind of a working environment. So that's on an organisational level. On a team level, civility, it sounds really basic, but when we are kind to others and others are kind to us, we know that things happen within our neurobiology and our body. You know, like you are midwives, you know what the power of oxytocin and touch and all of that has on those people that you support. So there is something about making that intentional and conscious decision to be kind and civil to those that you work with and have meaningful exchanges. They don't have to take an abundance of time. I was sharing with some of you today around, you know, when I talk to teams about things that they can do, and they say, Jan, we don't have time to do the jobs that are on our list, never mind all of this. This doesn't have to take an abundance of time. It could be as you're walking down the corridor, you maybe see a colleague who is looking a bit stressed. You hold and maintain eye contact, smile at them. And in that exchange, in that moment, what you're saying to them is, I see you, I recognize it because I've been there too, you know, and I'm here. And it's maybe then later on you go and you check in. So these are literally micro moments as you're walking, as you're doing things. It could be making a colleague a cup of tea. They don't have to be massive things, but what it's doing, it's making the intention to care for colleagues. That doesn't mean that you take on their difficulties or their challenges that they're facing. It is about having those meaningful exchanges and trying to create that culture of kindness and support and nurture for one another. And having that then helps that team cohesion where you're then glued to one another and will support one another, but that the responsibility is shared. So those are things on a team level. On an individual level, it's being able to identify and manage some of the mental health challenges. You know, I know a lot of people that within the workshops and programs that we run, we talk about things like compassion fatigue or moral injury or burnout, and they're maybe the first time that people are hearing it. And so there's things about being able to identify what some of those symptoms are. So for example, like compassion fatigue, for me, although it's perhaps a bit controversial to say this, I don't think we get rid of compassion fatigue. If you're there, you're in the relationship with someone that you are supporting, like those women and birthing people and families that you all are doing, that is going to have an impact. You know, so it has an impact because you care. And so rather than preventing and stopping compassion fatigue happening, what you're doing is you're putting things in place to stop the progression of it. So it could be those symptoms and signs are things that you identify and work. So you might be not just having an off day, but perhaps thinking in your mind, oh, I've heard much worse, or I don't think this person's in as much pain as what they're saying. It may mean like nothing on its own, but those are really subtle cues that you might then be ramping up on that compassion fatigue level, or it could play out in your personal life. I know for me it certainly does. For me, signs my compassion fatigue are ramping up is the kids become tasks. You know, I maybe shouldn't say that, but yeah, it becomes like I just have to do that, and that's definitely a sign for me, right? I need to put some things in place because I know that I'm ramping up on that compassion fatigue. And you'll be impacted because you care, not in spite of. And then, yeah, as I say, there are things that you can do that are really simple to help you care for colleagues as well. mindful of time because I can talk. So I created this just as a way to, I guess, illustrate the power that we all have. We all have in supporting one another to support those clients and families and birthing people that we have. So in order for you to be able to give the best compassionate, value-based care that you can give to those that you look after, it means that you need to look after yourself first and foremost. Your team then needs to hold you, and your organization then needs to hold the team. And at any point in this, it can be incredibly healing, and it can also be very nurturing and nourishing. And the opposite, if any aspect of this then is impacted, it can then increase the risk of not only those people in your care being traumatized or impacted or not receiving the care that they would expect, but you also are impacted, you also are at risk of being wounded. And I know I've been talking to many of you today, which has been so lovely. It's our first in person since COVID, so anybody we're talking to, we're really enjoying it. But what I'm hearing massively is what you're doing. You're out there, you're trying your best, you do everything that you can to provide the care that you want to. And what I would say, and it's an and instead of a but, it's also about caring for yourselves, to also look after yourself, to nurture yourself. And that's a skill. It's not something, this isn't about self-care, go and have a bath, go and, drink more. Those things are important for sure. But self-care is put in place as a preventative measure. If you're burnt out or you're ramping up on that higher level of moral injury, trauma, self-care isn't going to cut it. You're going to need something that is much more directive and energized into addressing whatever symptoms that you have. So this is our team. We've like a massive team of all varied experiences and backgrounds. And so these are the people that you will see in the programs that we run and the workshops that we lead. And as I say, we're all from very different backgrounds with very different theologies that we come from and points of reference. However, one thread that runs through our whole team and our organization is to value ourselves and value those that we support in the work that we do. So just moving on to some of the things that and how we do that. So we run leadership and wellbeing programs. So this is basically from the senior leadership team right down to maternity support workers. So we go in initially, we assess how the workforce are doing, how psychologically safe they feel within their organisation, what mental health assessments are, what things are working really well in their organisation and where they're having support and the benefits of that. And within that, we then offer a varied workshops, coaching session, individuals and groups. We have bespoke content specifically for everyone at each stage of their career. We offer a program then for preceptorship midwives. And what we also do within that is teach staff how to nurture themselves, because as I say, it's a skill. It's not something you just end up in this profession and know how to do that. You learn how to look after others, and most people are in this profession because it's something that comes quite natural to them. But this is how do you learn and nurture yourself? How do you put boundaries in place so that you can have a long and fulfilling and thriving career within maternity. We also then evaluate it at different stages of the program. They usually run between 6 and 8 months. And we also offer Mind Yourself within it, which I'll come on to and talk about. So the workshops that we offer are called Psychological Boost workshops. I'm laughing as I say that, because after the morning Shazma and I had to get here, we were like, a psychological boost workshop would be ideal right now for what we would need. So these are online trauma-informed workshops. Again, they're online deliberately because they work really well in the sense of there's people from lots of different trusts that are there. So what's really lovely is the sharing with one another, where somebody's saying, oh, we do this at our trust, we do this at ours. So there's a really lovely learning and support that people have with one another. And I guess the main first 2 hours focus of that are really developing those skills to be able to identify and address some of those mental health challenges like compassion fatigue or burnout or trauma that we talked about. And also then we have a safe space of about an hour at the end where people can just come and share. And someone asked me earlier, is it a bit like group therapy? It's not. However, because of the experience that we have in the team, what we call it more is that safe therapeutic space. So it's more like therapeutic coaching. And because of the range of experiences of other members of the group there, so there's no more than 20 in any one workshop, then it's you can garner support and ideas and ways that people support one another across their trust, but also within their teams as well, which is really lovely to see. So we've been like anybody that's gone past, we've been like, come and try our app, which thank you all so much for being so engaged and so motivated to come and try it with us today. So we have an ambitious mission, which we have a very well planned over the next few years on how we're going to reach our target of preventing the mental health difficulties in 50 million health and social care workers. And so our app is something that I guess has come off all of those years of experience that we all have as a team of working in this space. Also the feedback that we've got across the programs and the workshops that we've been delivering to come up with something that we are really, really hoping is going to support staff to prevent the progression of mental health difficulties. So this is just a snapshot of what it does. So it's the first anonymized and preventative app. So that has been very deliberate on our part, because what we've heard certainly over the last couple of years is a mistrust that a lot of staff have felt with their organization. And so we want to give this to organizations so they can then send that to their workforce. And so we deliberately don't take any data within the app, so you can't be tracked in any way or traced, or no one will know Jan has been using the SelfCompassion Beginner for 3 weeks now. So that's been really important for us to do that. It's something that you can use while you're on shift. So I totally get how time poor you all are. And so these are things that are evidence-based that you can do within under 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, that will really prevent the progression of mental health difficulties. We know that you bring your whole self to work. If only a disagreement that I had with my partner on the way into work isn't going to impact me in the first hour or so, that I mean, that would be amazing. but we bring our whole selves to work. And so in that, trying then to create this as a package with the workshops and the programs is something that we're really, really advocating for people to do, or for some trusts and organisations. What they're doing is they're taking it and just giving it to some staff as a standalone to try and offer some support at work that is accessible and evidence-based. I'm on time. Reach out to us. We're accessible. We're happy to come and have a conversation with you, talk to you about different things, and can offer bespoke things as well. So if there's something that I've talked about that you think, I'm not sure how that might work in my trust or organisation, please come and have a chat to us.